Welcome back, everybody, to the Unlocked Athlete podcast. We're so grateful that you're here. And today we have Reagan Rust with us. She's going to talk about her story, her career, and what she's doing now. And most importantly, we're going to dig into how she's developed an elite mindset. So Reagan, thank you so much for being here with us. And if you want to go ahead and just kind of share with the audience a little bit about yourself and go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. A little bit about me. I'm from Mississippi, probably one of the only hockey players you guys have ever met from Mississippi. Small community down there, only one rink. So I got my start playing down there. I've played all over the world at this point, professional, D1 hockey, AAA hockey at every level possible for women. So, well, minus the Olympics. And now I'm coaching out here in California. And I'm heading to Women's World soon. So I'll be doing all the social media content for them. The IHF, I don't know if you guys watch that at all. You should. It's next week. It starts. And it's going to be in Denmark. So it's going to be some really good competition.
We're in.
Awesome.
We're in.
Yeah, we're down. So I saw that, like, as a teenager, you commuted 12 hours every other weekend to go and play hockey, right? Can you talk a little bit about, like, that's commitment right there. Can you share a little bit about that?
My mom's a little crazy. If I put it that, actually very determined and very dedicated is what I will say, but also a little bit on the crazy side because 12 hours was a lot. So we started playing in Mississippi, obviously. And then as we got a little bit better, we moved to AA hockey, which was out of Nashville. So about 3 hours away from home. And then I think when I was 12, I think I was 12 years old, I tried out for a AAA team in Pittsburgh, which was kind of the closest AAA team to Mississippi from where I was. And so me and my best friend made it, fortunately. So I had a driving buddy and we would go 12 hours there. We would leave, I think after school on Thursdays, drive all throughout the night and then get there for practice like Fridays. And so we were doing that. And then we would leave right after the last practice, which was probably like 11 or 12 in the afternoon on Sundays. If we were lucky, sometimes it's a little bit later, like 4. And then we'd get back at 4 a.m. My mom would drive all throughout the night for us, kind of switching off with the other parent too. But yeah, a lot of dedication there.
And that was like U14?
Yeah, U14, first year. Wasn't even playing either. I wasn't good.
Crazy. Can we dig into that a little bit? Because, okay, you're young. We're talking, well, you're young now, but you're young back then, super young, and you're going that distance. Obviously, that's huge that mom was on board and that you had the friend, but that's a long time, like, to sit in a car. So there's some type of dedication. There's something there that it's so easy to turn away from that at that point, especially when you don't have access locally to the sport. So what do you attribute that to? Why?
It's a great question. I definitely loved it. I know my mom loved it too. I think she always liked the community aspect. So when we were living in Mississippi, all my family lived out here in California and it was just us down there. And when we got into hockey, it was like this huge community that we had. And no huge, quote unquote, like not huge compared to anywhere else, but in Mississippi, like we had at least 30, 40 parents running around, like always chatting. Like my mom had that sense of community there. I had that sense of community. And so when they started like a travel team, I was playing boys travel, which was really fun, but it was a different experience than playing with girls. And so we were probably traveling, up to 8-10 hours for the boys teams already. So like sometimes we'd be 3 hours away, sometimes 5, just depending on the weekend. And when we made that jump, it wasn't too big of a difference from what we were already doing. Plus we had better competition. Plus there was a roadmap for us when we were playing girls hockey. And so when we were with those families, they brought us in. Like we would go spend our Thanksgivings with them and they would literally let us stay at their house. We'd make chocolate chip pancakes. We would get ready for our games on the weekends all together. So it wasn't like we were in it alone. Like at the end of the day, it was a huge community. And I think that's why we stayed, was just because we loved every aspect of it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, why? So how did you get into hockey? Sorry, Billy.
No, you're fine.
My aunt started watching the Memphis River Kings, which was a CHL team at the time. Now it's SPHL. Memphis River Kings are no longer around. But when they were, like back in 2002 is when they started to get pretty big down in South Haven / Memphis. And so my aunt was going, she started bringing me and my sister. It was like a fun thing that we would do together. We started meeting the players, doing skates after their games. And then they knew us pretty well at that point. So the next year they actually made a rec league program. And they're like, you guys should come out, like to me and my sister. There's going to be tons of girls. It's going to be so much fun. We came out, like I've been telling everyone, it was just me and my sister, one other girl, and 30 boys. And we just kept going. We didn't stop. I don't know. We got on the ice maybe like once a month, but we looked forward to that 1 hour on the ice. And then we'd pick up skates whenever we could.
That's really wild, but I want to kind of jump back to something that just popped into my head. So when you were talking about commuting 12 hours, so you said that you're commuting 12 hours and you didn't really play.
Yeah.
So I have, this is so good because I have athletes that are, say, freshmen in high school and like not playing varsity, and they want to transfer schools, right? So there's a certain level of motivation and commitment that comes with that, right? And just wanting to stick with it when things aren't going your way. So I guess what was your motivation to keep like jumping in the car every weekend and not necessarily getting to play and traveling that distance?
I was always a determined kid, is what I will say. Like I had goals starting in 5th grade. I had my whole 10-year plan planned out. Like I wanted to play college hockey. I wanted to be on the Olympic team, all of those things. And so for me, I knew that that was where I wanted to be. I knew that was the path that I needed to take, even if like I didn't necessarily know it at the time. Like I had a good idea that that was what I needed to do. And so playing 14U, I mean, it was a coach. I think what kept me in it was the girls around me. And so like I wasn't the only player getting benched. I think that helped me. And so like although I had a sour attitude at first, I started looking at like what my other teammates were doing, even like the younger players on the team. Like obviously they knew that they weren't going to get playing time, but when it comes to like third period and it's a tight game, I'm getting benched, and I knew that was going to happen. And so I was good. I think what helped me was I was good on my boys team. And so I had my confidence there, and I knew that I could be good on my girls team, but it was just going to take time. It was a lot of overcoming comparison too. So my best friend that was traveling with me, she was always on first line and I wasn't. And so like we would drive together and I had to like be able to separate those feelings. Like she's my best friend. I'm not gonna be mad because she's having success. It was definitely challenging, but I think learning to have the perseverance and like seeing how much my mom was putting in, seeing how much the girls were putting in, it elevated my mental capacity. Like I knew that I didn't always want to be the best and I didn't have to be the best, but I could keep growing no matter what. And so even like the next year, so like the first year that I played 14U AAA, I told you I was getting benched a lot of third periods. Even sometimes we would show up late. Well, we were driving 12 hours, but the coach would bench us the first full period because we showed up late to warm-ups. We're like, what are we supposed to do? Like we're driving halfway. So I would get benched. My friend would probably get thrown in. I won it. But then the next year we got a new coach and she kind of changed my whole perspective. Like she rebuilt my confidence. And so, I mean, there were definitely times where I thought about quitting 14U year. Like I told my mom, I was like, I can't do this anymore. She's like, just keep going. Just like take it one game at a time. That's all you got to do. And so the next year when that coach came in, she had trust in me. I think it was that faith that she was like, I see potential in you. I'm like, okay, that's all I need. I just need you to believe in me and then I'll get there. And by the end of the year, she named me captain and that was just my second year 14s. So
that's amazing. Was there like a turning point in the middle of the season or at any point in the season where like something clicked for you, or was it just because this is like it's a poor analogy, but it's kind of like the stonemason, right? Clicks, and at the end he finally breaks through and creates a masterpiece, right? And we see the finished product, right? But we didn't see the thousands and thousands and thousands of hammer chisels, right? It's usually just that one moment when it's finished. So was there a moment in the middle of the season or throughout that season that you can recall that was like, that was the turning point for me? Like, was there a game where you just like balled out of control and like you were like, all right, that's it. Like that gave you the confidence?
It actually didn't come that season.
Really?
That first year season did not come. I think I remember we played our districts match. So we drove up 12 hours just for 2 games and maybe 1 or 2. And then I remember being benched for most of that game. and going into the car, and I just covered my head and just cried. I cried and cried and cried. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And we ended up going nationals. It was a good time. And then throughout that summer, I was like, okay, time to put in the work. So it wasn't a turning moment during the season, but I knew that I could change it for the next season. So like after I made the team, after I did the tryouts, everything like that, I just thought about like, okay, it's a new beginning. It's a new year. I don't have to be the same person that I was last year.
That's great.
So this coach, it sounds like she had a big impact on you. One curious one is what the one that kind of came in and built up your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
One is like, what did she do? If there is anything that you would share, but also I was curious, like where along your path, because obviously what you do now is you help people, athletes, female mainly, I think, on and off the field. Where did that really start to come into your playing? Who were those influences for you that sort of like, showed you what you can do from a mindset standpoint?
She was definitely, I think that would be the start of it, was her. I should probably tell her this too. She's the one that got me connected with BU too when I was transferred, which is crazy. It was like a full circle moment. But I think it was the fact that she understood how female athletes worked. She was never screaming. Like my other coach, he was like, I'm going to treat you like I treat the junior boys. And we're like, we're 13 years old. Like junior boys are like 18 and like way bigger than us, all of that. So he was just bag skating us. And I think he took the fun out of it, but she brought it back in. Like there's this drill. It was just a random warm-up skating drill. But every time we skated over a dot, we had to make like a Pac-Man noise. And it was like, you're going and like, boop, and then keep going. And then like, it's just those silly things, I think, brought the fun back into the game for me. And that's kind of what I try to do with my girls now, is like remind them that it doesn't always have to be super serious. So she started that. And then obviously like I had other really good coaches with Penn's Lead. I was very fortunate to have so many D1 coaches. So we had a girl that had played at Harvard, and she ended up taking us all around the Harvard campus whenever we went to Boston. And then I had another coach, she was the captain at St. Lawrence, and like just these great female role models that inspired me and showed me that like, yeah, you can make it here and I'm here to help you. So I ended up honestly started mentoring probably like 3 or 4 years after that. My senior year of high school, for sure, I started mentoring other young female athletes. So starting in like middle school or ninth graders.
Would you say that, and was that because you saw how there were certain figures for you, or that basically kind of helped get you to where you went? Is that why you felt like you wanted to give that back?
Yeah, and it just feels good too at the same time. I mean, I always think back to when I was in Mississippi, I had really no idea what was going on. I didn't know that a lot of other girls played ice hockey until I started traveling around and seeing it around the country. And so, especially because nobody else in my family had ever played hockey. Nobody had ever been to college. Nobody ever played a sport in college. I was the first one in my family to do that. And so knowing that it was really difficult for me going to 5 different high schools and traveling around so much, like I wanted to give that same experience. Like, this is what you can do. This is how you can get there. But there's also different options and different routes that will get you to where you want to be. So working the different camps, like all the girls would ask me questions about playing AAA, about being at like 19U level, all of that. And so it kind of just manifested itself over time as I was doing all these different camps and clinics.
Awesome.
Can you share with us a little bit about like what inspired you? And I think you just briefly kind of touched on it, but like what inspired you to start the Female Athlete Society? And can you share with us a little bit about like the good work you're doing there?
So I always wanted to start like a full-on mentorship program. It was kind of difficult in college because I didn't really know how to start a business, And so I was trying to brainstorm different ways, like how do I make it for the masses? How do I make it where it's like enough impact on people? And when I was in Budapest, that's when I really started writing down all my thoughts. So I was in Budapest in August 2020, and then my season got cut short because of COVID. So I ended up coming home like only 2 months after getting there. And so when I got home, I didn't have a sense of purpose anymore in my life. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not an athlete, so who am I? And then I started thinking back. I was like, well, I've done this for people. I've done that. I do good work here. And so I actually just put out a random TikTok and I said, attention all female athletes, like I'm trying to help the next generation get to where they want to be. I can help you with balancing school, the recruiting process, getting good grades, time management, and then a few other things into it. and it got, I think, like 500,000 views.
Holy
And
moly.
I got thousands and thousands of DMs. Like my TikTok and Instagram DMs blew up like overnight, and I didn't know what to do. And so I was like answering them one by one. And I was like, okay, this is just way too much. Like I still have some that are popping up into my feed from like 2 years ago. And so I ended up making a platform offline, just like community where the girls could jump into. There was free calls once a week. And then there was tons of resources that were being thrown in there, not only just the ones that we were writing. So I had some volunteers helping me as well. And like we had some college students that were, they were doing psychology and sports. There was a trainer, there was a nutritionist, like everybody that was kind of just helping out because they knew that it was also needed. And so we did a lot of one-on-ones, workouts, everything. And then we started the Instagram feed, just like posting all the different resources that people might need, or what I think that is needed at that time of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's it's like you put it out there and you got your answer. It's like it showed up for you in a big way. I mean, that's
in a really big way.
Yeah.
What's kind of been the overall like response to your athletes? I mean, I know you don't. There's probably like some really inspirational stories and like personal stories, but if you can share some of those, and like, I mean, you don't have to get specific, obviously, but just kind of talk about. I think it's important not to be arrogant, but to also, when you do good work, like to reflect on that, because you know it's God working through you to help other people. So if you can kind of share like some of the impact that you've had, or that you and your team have been able to produce through your work.
I would say, I mean, the sense of community was the biggest thing. So I always go back to community. Like that's what I want. That's what I know other people need. And that's a lot that's missing in today's society, is not having that community to talk to about what's going on in your life. And so in the community, we had over 15 different countries being represented, over like every single sport you could possibly imagine. We had handball, we had rugby, we had football, we had equestrian. All these girls were in there asking questions like, I don't know what to do. And I think the biggest thing was helping the girls with their confidence, because a lot of times, obviously, boys, not so intelligent boys, will be commenting on them saying like, you know what, you're actually not good. Like, I'm better at this sport than you are. Like, I could do this with like blindfolded, you know, silly things like that. But it makes a big impact on those young girls. And so when they're getting that feedback, like, yeah, I've been there. I've had to take that as well. Like, I dealt with this through this time here, or with those boys there, and just like helping them deal with it on their own. So I'm like, I'll give them my tips that help me, and then I'll help them work through a plan to get through it. And even there's been some girls that were like, I was really scared to talk to my dad about this situation. And then I was like, well, maybe you should just open it up. Just like try to have an open conversation, see what happens. She's like, I'm really scared. Like, I don't think I can do it. I was like, I'm telling you, I think he might be a little bit more understanding than you think he's going to be. She had the conversation. She was like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever happened. Like, he was so understanding. And like, all he said is that he just wanted to help me because she was struggling in her sport and everything like that. And so I think it's those little things. And then people come back to me still, and they message me and saying like, hey, I know it's been a while since I reached out, but like, I just wanted to let you know, like, you really helped me. Like, your message, everything that you gave me was really inspiring, and it got me to do what I need to do. And so those little things, there's just the little messages, the little
things. That's the best, isn't it?
Yeah.
You really, the impact that you're making on them is huge. And I assume that you probably try to get to them as early as you can in their age, before someone like, you know, that mean boy shuts down, you know, their dreams, for example. I hope that wouldn't be the case, but are you seeing, like, are you getting to some of like the real young athletes? Are those some of the, you know, the ones that are really starting to find you, or that you're finding and helping?
Yeah, I've had girls from like 10 years old up to pros reach out to me. And I work, there's a lot of college athletes that still reach out, whether it's about transferring or about confidence or about whatever they need in college. Like, I have a lot of the answers. I've already been through it. And so I think a lot of people feel comfortable reaching out to me at this point, because even on my TikTok, I just post about things that relate back to the athletes. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're trendy, but also it's like, it's stories. Like, these are the real things that I've been through. Like my transfer story, that one got over 1 million views. because I told my story about how my coach was so terrible to me and I ended up transferring as the best thing that ever happened. And a lot of people resonated with that. So I had hundreds of people reaching out after.
Wow. Can you share a little bit about that, about when you transferred to, to Boston, and like you ended up becoming like an alternative captain and all that? Can you just kind of walk people? Because I think that's a challenge that a lot of athletes, well, I've seen it personally, like with high school athletes, and I live in Indiana, and they'll transfer schools, right? And just moving into that new environment, from an old environment that maybe was a little toxic, and they just kind of struggle to fit in. So could you kind of walk through what that looked like for you on the collegiate level? And then you obviously thrived there, so just kind of share that experience with everybody.
So I really struggled too whenever I transferred, which is probably not what people want to hear, but I was already dealing with the PTSD. I was dealing with the depression that I had at RIT, and it still carried over. Obviously, just because you move doesn't mean it's not going to follow you. And so I was working through that whole big transition piece and a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, do I actually belong here? Is this like the spot for me? Is the coach going to cut me at any time? And it took a few months, probably like 3 or 4 months, because I started at the end of May and I did all of summer school for those 2.5 months. And it probably took well into September, October to where I really felt comfortable with the girls. And I was like, okay, this is actually where I'm supposed to be. The girls want me here. The coaches want me here. I can tell that they're different from the other culture that I had. Like they're very supportive and they want a team environment. And so it wasn't easy at first. And obviously I was going in a junior at like one of the biggest hockey universities in the country. And so nobody knew who I was. Everyone was like, are you a freshman? And I was like, no. And I was even getting that like the next year when I was one of the captains. They're like, I've never seen you before. Like, there's no way you're a captain. I was like, yeah, I got here last year, but I'm a captain this year. Like, relax, okay? But I think a big thing is realizing, even though you're restarting, even though it's not necessarily the most ideal time to restart as a junior or a sophomore, whenever you're doing it, you can still bring the qualities that you had as like the player, where like what you're most confident with. So I knew that I was really good at being a vocal leader. And so that's what I brought with me. I knew that I could be a leader by example as well. And so like I was always showing up for the girls. I was always talking. I was always doing whatever the team needed me to be, or bringing the energy to the ice. And so I think that's what got me out of my head, and then being more around my teammates was just bringing what I knew that I was good at onto the ice. And not being so self-conscious like everybody usually is. Yeah.
No, that's really good. It's good advice too.
It's really good advice. You talk about the lows. You just mentioned there was some depression or of something in that area. Are you pretty open about that?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you mentioned it. Have you found that you being open about it just allows you to serve others that much more, as far as them being able to resonate and like any specific stories or anything that, it can be general, but like, is there, would love to hear any stories that you have with, as far as, certain people or help with, around that.
Yeah, for sure. I've been very open about my mental health. So just for a backstory, like the first time I really dealt with depression was my 9th grade year. I was very, very depressed, on the verge of suicide. So I basically planned it out. And then by the grace of God or whoever, some higher power, like changed that direction by just a phone call. It was a random phone call. I don't even know if it was real at this point. But I dealt with that in high school. And so whenever I transferred to BU, obviously I was dealing with like really, really bad depression. I was on the verge of like suicide again. My coaches didn't really know that, but they did let me take a day off. I was like, coach, I'm really not good. Like, I need to go. I can't be at the rink today. Talked to my professors. They were like, take the time that you need. Don't worry about it. We'll move your exams. It's okay. And so I had a therapist at the time too. So that stuff was really challenging for me, but I think whenever I started to actually share it with my teammates, that's when we all became a little bit closer. And so a big moment and a big time that I remember is my senior year. We were going through this exercise in January. So you guys know, like winter break, all the players or all the athletes are still there. And so in January, we were having this conversation with one of our leadership development people at BU at the time. And the activity was you draw on a piece of paper. There's 3 different things that you draw. It's how you see yourself, how others see you, and how you want to be seen. And you can just draw different images or put words in each of those boxes. And you go around like at the table. We did in small groups. And it got to me. I said everything that I needed to say. And I was open about like, you know, I have really high highs and really low lows. And I think I drew a mountain or some clouds and some water. I don't know, something along those lines. And then we go to the round table and everybody gets to kind of share, like, do you want to share like to the whole group? And obviously when you're a leader on the team, you kind of have to be a little bit more vulnerable in order for everyone else to feel comfortable. And there was this point where we were sitting in silence for probably 2 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to say what I need to say. And this is going to sound bad, but I'll give you the backstory after. But I said, I hate my parents. And I started breaking down. I was like, it's really hard for me to see all of you guys here with your families and all of them coming to support you guys. And like, you guys are so happy. And like, it honestly, it's so great having you guys because you always invite me out with your families when you see that mine's not here and stuff along those lines. And so like growing up, I didn't have a great relationship with my parents. I still don't have a great relationship with my dad, but my mom, I'm kind of like mending that relationship. But it was really hard in college because you see like all these families are coming to support, like they're coming for the weekends, they're coming for like all the family trips. And so they're going out to dinner and then I go home alone, you know, but they all came and gave me like a huge hug. Like people were in tears, like, we are your family. Like, that's why we're here. And so I think that for me was like a really big pivotal moment. And then we ended up winning at our bean pot for the first time ever. And so that was only like a month and a half after, maybe even a month after. But I think like that was like a moment where we all got super close because we were willing to be vulnerable in front of each other.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yes.
For real. Like a lot, I know that there's a lot of athletes out there that struggle with, and I know that you help with the mental health side of the sport. I mean, we saw it at the Olympics with Simone Biles. That was probably the biggest, like on the largest stage in the world, right? We see these athletes and we see that, you know, you guys are vulnerable. While you're out there doing your thing, you know, you look invincible. So I think it's really important to share that side of things and let athletes, boys, girls, men, women know that it's okay to have those feelings and that it's not okay. Like working on the mental side of the sport is not just having a positive attitude all the time, right? Like you're going to have those ups and downs. So I think it's really important for people like you to share your story. So thank you for doing that.
No problem.
And seriously, yes, thank you. And I assume, but that you've seen it as a strength to be able to, for someone to be able to open up like that and share it versus it being a weakness. It's a strength.
100%. It's like the scariest thing that you can do. You're putting out the thing that you hide from everyone because you're scared of being judged. And then when you throw it out there, it's like, well, now you can't throw it in my face, you know? So I think it's a strength. It's hard. It's something that's really hard to do.
Totally. Now you mentioned the bean pot. And to be honest, I had to look it up. But I just, it's a 70-year-old tournament. But not just that, you're a Hall of Fame inductee. How did that happen?
I don't know. So they had never, like BU had never won it before on the varsity level. So like Mary Philip Poulin, who I hope you know who she is. She's the captain of Team Canada, one of the best players of all time, has scored multiple golden goals at the Olympics for Team Canada to win gold medals. And she was a captain at BU. She led the team. She took them all the way up to like Frozen Four in the semifinals. And the one thing that she was never able to capture, obviously national championship, but was the bean pot. And so for us to be able to do that after, I think it was like 38 years, the first, like we had the same amount of bean pots as Brown University, and Brown wasn't even in the tournament. They just joined for 1 year, like way back in the day. And so it was kind of embarrassing. We had this long drought and we called it like the bean pot curse. And so for us to do that as a team and like be able to come out of it and win it, like we call it the national championship, but for Boston schools, it's like that big of a deal. And we battled. We were playing Northeastern, so we hadn't beat Northeastern in the entire time that I had been at BU. And it was just a super back and forth game. I remember like it was not my best game either. I was like, okay, I just got to get my job done. Just play defense. Don't even worry about forward. Just get the puck out. And so that's what I was focusing on the entire game. And then when we go into shootout, that was absurd. It was like high. My heart rate, like I have the picture of it, was a constant like 180 that entire shootout. And I was just sitting on the bench for most of it. So our top two scorers go, and like top two scorers in the country, like one of them's on Team USA right now. They both try to deke on one of the best goalies. So that best goalie is now on Team USA right now as well. And so she obviously stopped the first two. I think they scored one. And so they scored in the second one. And then we had one of our freshmen or sophomores at the time go out, and nobody even knew, but she had actually lost her grandfather that day. And yeah, I'll get to why that's important. And she ended up scoring like a crazy dig. Like the goalie was completely out of the net and she scored. And then they go down on Schroeder. She saves the puck. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's sudden death now. Like, what's going on? And I start seeing him walking towards me. I'm like, oh my God, if he chooses me right now, like I'm not having a good game. And he's like, he puts his, I'm like, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. He puts his arms, he puts his hands on my shoulders. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I just take a deep breath. He's like, you know, we had a girl on our team lose her grandfather today. And this is, I haven't told anyone this story out loud, but, and I was like, okay. And he's like, you can make her a very happy girl. He's like, wow. Get out there. And I was like, what? I was like, how are you going to put that on me right now? So I go out. I have no idea what I'm about to do. I'm not like a shootout person whatsoever. And I'm like, should I deke? I'm like, the ice is really bad. Like I'm kind of scared to deke. And the other two like didn't do too good. And so I go down and I come down like the right side, then move over to the left. I'm like, I'm just going to shoot it like top right. It goes in. I like couldn't even see the top right. I just shot it and like prayed. And I sallied like no other. I've never sallied in a game before, but I sallied during that and everybody was just going wild. So that was like part of why they chose me for that. And then the second game we played against Harvard, which was still a very tight game. All three of us captains scored. So I scored the opening goal. Our other captain scored the tying goal, and then we scored the OT winner was one of our other captains. And it was just like a crazy team experience altogether. Yeah, definitely partied after that one.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. We had Jonathan Bornstein on, who played for Team USA men's national team soccer team, plays for the Chicago Fire, and so we kind of asked him like, dude, what was it like to score a goal in the World Cup? Right. And like to play in the World Cup. And he was like, kind of described that experience. So I always love hearing like sports experiences like that, like literally movie stuff, like what you just described. Like, no, so that's really cool. Well, Reagan, we just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. Super inspirational. We love what you're doing for female athletes all over the world. And if you just want to share with everybody where they can find you, learn more information about what you're doing, and let that go. So,
yeah, you can. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I answer practically all my DMs. It's rea.rust, just my name, and then TikTok Reagan Rust. But I think you can only comment there. Email Reagan@reaganrust.com or Female Athlete Society on Instagram. So a lot of different places you can reach me, which is good.
And if anyone reaches out to us, we can pass them along too. There was one thing I wanted to ask, Bill, you may have another one, but I wanted to ask you one thing before we cut this off, is that obviously you work with this age group, but I just want to like take you back to when you were traveling those 12 hours. So there's a girl out there right now that's in the same situation. I just want to know, what do you say to her?
Enjoy it. That's all. I mean, those road trips were some of the best memories I have as a kid. It's like you and your family doing a cross-country road trip, except I just got to do it every other weekend. And so I got to spend a lot of quality time with my best friend. We always joke, like, nobody's ever been in the car as long as we have together. Like we'll never have that, no matter how many road trips we take with anyone else. Like we did that every weekend. And so like we were best friends because of that. And I think in just taking in those little moments, because I mean, it's special. It makes your story. It makes you who you are. And like not a lot of people get to say that they get to travel every weekend as much as I did, or that they get to play the sport that they love, or that their parents are as committed as they are. So I think just enjoying it is like the most important piece.
Love it.